So, as you know, we've been reading this book, You Will Love Polly Odlum, and today, hope you relax and to sleep. We're in chapter 3. So, without any further delay, we shall begin with chapter 3, Michaela Collins. From the fifth floor office window, Michaela looked down at the street below. Rush hour, so it was curiously called, had started, and the south now was jam solid. A little of interest to watch. The pink-cloaked, pink-hatted crazy woman, whose craziness had already prompted her to direct the traffic to the mall, much to the confusion of the uninitiated out-of-town drivers, hadn't been so prompted today. Nobody was blasting a horn and yelling at some sneaky drivers for slipping into their car parking space. No chance then of a blazing argument for Michaela to watch to pass the time. Nor were there any especially good-looking men strolling along the pavement for her to gaze after and wonder about. Nothing at all exciting. With lines of frustrated drivers, all listening to their car review, telling them that they no doubt took out for themselves that the South Mall had come to its usual Friday evening standstill. Michaela sighed, moved away from the window, and sat back down at her desk. She glanced at her watch, saw that it was just gone 5, and wondered what to do. The basket was empty, her typing was finished, the post was gone, and there still was almost a half an hour to go before home time. For no reason other than that she couldn't think of anything better to do, she began swiveling her swivel chair. Round and around she swiveled, oblivious to the sour stares directed at her from Denise across the room, until feeling dizzy she brought the chair to a stop. Noticing her colleague's sour face now, but supposing it was the heartburn from which Denise was killed or one of the other countless medical complaints she equally killed from, the confusedly asked, "Oh, Dee, are you heading out tonight?" "It's Friday," came the curt reply. What kind of an answer was that? Wondered Michaela. Did it mean she was, or she wasn't going out? "So are you heading out tonight, Dee?" she tried again. "Denise, the name is Denise. Would you ever stop calling me Dee? And I told you, it's Friday. I never go out on Friday." "I see," said Michaela doubtfully. "Why not?" "I just don't. Now stop annoying me." Michaela studied Denise. Everything about her screamed smug. Sitting there with her shoes kicked off, with her smug little sausage legs stretched out underneath the desk, and her smug little piggy toes going wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Smug. So smug. Michaela now succumbed to the temptation to rise her. "Maybe it's for religious reasons," she said, thinking aloud. "What?" "I was just thinking that maybe you've some religious reason for not going out on Friday. You know, the way Catholics don't eat meat on holy days, or Muslim women don't cook when they have their period because they're considered unclean." "Michaela!" Denise's little nylon-clad toes stopped wiggling. Such was her shock at such a vulgar utterance. "You're disgusting." "So why don't you?" Michaela persisted. "Why don't I what?" said Denise crossly. "Go out on a Friday. Look, Michaela, can't you see some of us have work to do?" "No, you don't." "Excuse me?" "Denise, you're making out your shopping list." "No." Denise got up from her desk, removed her pink fluffy cardigan from the back of her chair, where it habitually hung, draped it around her shoulders, and walked towards the door. Suddenly it struck Michaela that Denise always did this. Always draped her cardigan around her shoulders before she went out to the toilet or to the photocopier, and she began to wonder why. "Denise," she called, "are you afraid of catching a cold?" "What?" asked Denise crossly, pausing by the door. "Why do you always do that? You know, drape your cardigan around your shoulders. Is it 'cause you're worried you're afraid that the sight of you in your blouse will send the young solicitors wild with lust?" "Of all things to say," said Denise, outraged. "Michaela, you really are disgusting." 10 minutes past 5, 12 minutes past 5, surely half past by now. No, only 13 minutes past. Maybe her watch was slow. Michaela held it up to her ear. Well, it was ticking all right. "What time is it, Muriel?" Muriel, the other wicked witch, the second ugly sister. The third member of the happy crew sighed, put her hand over the receiver and said, "Michaela, I'm on the phone." 5 words Michaela counted. It would have taken me less effort to tell me the time, she whispered at her loudly. But Muriel just glared. Why couldn't Muriel have just told her the time? Michaela wondered. But then, a lot of things about Muriel and Denise caused her to wonder. Sometimes they'd all be sitting there, busily typing away, when one of them would suddenly feel the need to volunteer the oddest piece of information. Salt is the best thing for getting red wine stains out, Muriel would announce out of the blue, causing Michaela to sit there puzzled, wondering had she missed something. But Denise wouldn't seem to think so. Really, she'd answer, and later, 10 minutes later, or maybe an hour later, or maybe even the next day, she'd carry on and say, "You're right, salt is good. Pouring white wine in the stain is meant to be even more efficient. It neutralizes it." It would take Michaela a few minutes to figure out that they were back on the subject of red wine stains. And then later again, much later, when Michaela was sure the topic was well and truly finished with, Muriel would pipe up, "Of course, salt would be a lot cheaper than white wine." And they both seemed to have all these little rules to guide them through life, like allowing themselves a cream cake at 11's on Friday. Invariably one or other of them would announce, as she took that first bite, "It's Friday, I deserve a treat," which always made Michaela wonder what she'd done on the other days of the week to make her feel so unworthy. Very little, Michaela imagined. They weren't exactly wild ones. No, it was a bit sad though. Neither of them was more than 20. Denise came back into the room, threw Michaela a dirty look, carefully hung her cardigan on her chair again, and settled herself down. "Denise, have you got the time?" Michaela asked her. There was no reply. "Denise, have you got the time?" she repeated. Still no response. She got up, went over and tapped Denise on the shoulder, but her broad back didn't budge. Then Michaela decided on a different approach, a frontal attack, and went around, hopped onto the desk, and stretched out in front of Denise. "Denise, switch on your hearing aid," she said, pointing at her ear. "Michaela, get off!" "The batteries? Check the batteries, dear." "Get off, Michaela. I was just wondering if you have the time." "Mind your own business." Defeated, Michaela went back to her desk and dialed. At the signal, it would be 17, 19, and 9 seconds. Confirmed the friendliest voice she'd heard all day. Sadly, Michaela's watch had been right. Finally, the minute hand dragged itself around to 5:25. That was close enough, thought Michaela. She grabbed her things, called out goodbye, and bolted for the door. Immediately, Muriel and Denise checked their watches. "Well," said Muriel, "it seems we can have any time we want now, and arrive in at any hour. Remember when I said to you there was still no sign of her? It was at least 8:10 or at that stage, said Denise. It was even later yesterday, 8:15 at least. And would you look at that?" She left her computer on. Look. Who does that? Except who's going to turn it off? One of us. Anyway, what business is it of hers why I don't go out on Friday? Surely she should know by now. My night out is Saturday, said Denise, and lying across my desk and shouting at me like I've a good mind to complain her to Mr. O'Neill. I really do. It wouldn't do any good. She wouldn't care. And anyway, he wouldn't say anything to her. I think he has a thing for her. No wonder he was, the way she carries on. You should have seen her coming up in the lift at this lunchtime. You'd never think he was the boss because she was chatting away to him and laughing, she said, disgusted, out loud at some filthy joke he told. Do you remember it, said Muriel, trying not to sound too interested. What? The joke? No, not really. I didn't really get it. But I'm sure it was filthy. One of those double-meaning ones. There was a pause from both of them as they tried to think of other things to say about Michaela. In vain, said Denise, getting in there first. Thinks she's God's gift. God's gift. And that hair of hers. It drives me mad. You'd think she'd tied up, wouldn't you? But oh no, she sits there, licking it around the face. She's forever at it. Have you noticed? Have I? What? Diddy slipped back on her shoes and reached around to her cardigan and buttoned it up. "Oh well, that's another day down," she said. Michaela took the same route home every day. Reaching the corner of the hop softly, she paused and peered up the road. She tried to make out if there was anyone hanging around by the pedestrian bridge. Now that winter was drawing in and the nights were getting darker, she supposed she should be getting around the long way. This shortcut wasn't the safest, not with those drunks always hanging about. But it seemed quiet, and she was anxious to get home before Colin arrived back from work. She decided to risk it. Hurrying along, she thought of her good luck at lunchtime, still amazed that the fellow who'd found her purse should be so honest, for he looked like he could have done with keeping it. She arrived home to her house in the middle of the terrace. Straight away she took her jacket off and set to work. The place was a mess. Clothes strewn all over the bathroom and bedroom floors, CDs, old newspapers and magazines scattered all around the living room, half-eaten meals all over the table, the sink piled high with 3 days of unwashed plates. She hated when Colin was away, but that didn't stop her taking full advantage of these breaks from his obsessive needs. In fact, it was a point-like principle with her to absolutely wallow in her natural antagonists during his absences. He'd have gone berserk if he'd seen the state of the place. So with the CD player on at full volume, she rushed around, collecting up cups, bundling dirty clothes into the washing machine, and putting everything either back in its place or in the bin, or shoving it under a cushion or behind the couch. Satisfied with her efforts, she finally made the bed. After a quick shower, she went to her wardrobe and tried on practically everything she owned and just as quickly discarded them. A long black dress, way over the top, she decided, looking at herself critically in the mirror. A simple cotton dress. She'd be freezing if he didn't arrive before long, and besides, he'd absolutely loathe simple cotton dresses. Her long silk skirt shrunk in the wash, or maybe she had a few too many packets of crisps of late. Finally, when every decent thing she owned lay scattered across the bed, she settled for a short red dress and black high heels. Considered underwear for a second, but decided against it. It had no place in the kind of intimate evening she'd planned. Her mother, a model wife with a store of 1950 How to Be Perfect wife book. Always have a drink mixed for him when he arrives home. Take time to touch up your makeup, change into something nice, and carve out his day. The office. Would be very proud of what an exemplary wife her daughter was. Michaela thought wryly as she turned to the task of preparing dinner. But not so proud if she saw what Michaela did next. Marinating, boning, braising, and steaming were all mysterious activities to Michaela. Cooking to her meant sticking the requisite Marks and Spencer's cartons and packets in the microwave, waiting until it went ping, getting rid of all the evidence of branded wrapping, and then laying the food out prettily. Colin, who liked to think he was rather a connoisseur of fine food, fortunately wasn't in the habit of frequenting supermarkets, and so remained convinced, after 6 months of married life, that Michaela was an expert cook. With dinner, a Marks and Spencer's chicken masala and all its accompanying bits and bobs going merrily around and round in the microwave, and the beer cooling in the fridge, she went into the living room. There she set the fire, dimmed the lights, and was searching through her CD collection for something suitable. She heard his car pull up outside. "Hi," called Colin, coming in. "Hi," she called back. "I'm in here." Letting his bags down in the hallway, Colin came into the sitting room. He flopped down on the couch, loosened his tie, rested his head back, and closed his eyes. "I'm wrecked," he said. Michaela put a CD on to play, got up from where she was kneeling, and came over to sit with him. Sitting on the arm of the chair beside him, she began to kiss him gently, little kisses along the side of his neck, and she stroked his hair. Eyes still closed, he smiled. She opened one of his shirt buttons and slid her hand inside. "I've missed you," she said softly. "I've only been gone for a few days," he laughed. I know, but it seems like ages." She was about to undo a second button. He opened his eyes and straightened up. "I'm starving," he said. "Well, there's some dinner ready," said Michaela, trying not to sound too disappointed. But she hoped that food might be the foremost on his mind. "But Michaela, we're going out," said Colin. "Going out?" "Yes, out." "Out where?" To dinner. To dinner? At Chez Zoe. Chez Zoe? Michaela, stop repeating everything I say. You're like a parrot. It's getting on my nerves, and there's no need to sound so surprised. Remember I told you I was going to book dinner at Chez Zoe, that new place. Then he realised that although he meant to, he couldn't remember actually saying it to her. But he carried on regardless. Remember, before I went to Limerick. Colin, you didn't tell me. Anyway, can't you cancel it? I'd much rather stay home. Don't be ridiculous. Then he glared at the CD player, got up quickly, went over and turned it off. That's better. He turned back to her and continued, I thought you'd like to go out. You're always saying we don't go anywhere. There's no pleasing you, Michaela. There really isn't. And anyway, this restaurant is supposed to be fantastic. Top class. With a resident string quartet. They're very romantic. You'll love it. I know you will. It's just your kind of place. All candlelight and atmosphere. Besides, it would be a shame to cancel it. It's nearly impossible to get a table there. You're right, said Michaela. We haven't gone out together for ages, and it is Friday. And maybe we could head out afterwards to a disco. Well, I'm not so sure about that, he laughed. I can't see Peg and Brenda being on for that. Peg and Brenda, she stared at him. He wasn't paying her any attention. He was searching through the CD rack. It's on the mantelpiece, she told him, knowing that he was searching for his Barry Manilow CD. It's the only thing he ever put on to play. Although Samantha might, she'd be on for anything, he said. Samantha? And the two lads certainly will. They're mental when they get going. The two lads. Who the hell are the two lads? And Peg and Brenda and Samantha. Am I supposed to know these people? Sure you do. Ben Phillips and Philip Brennan. Michaela stared at him for a moment, puzzled. Then her face fell. Now those two fellows you work with. Yeah, they're gas characters. Remember the last night we were out with them? That night of the office party. God, that was a wild night, he said, starting to laugh. Do you remember going home into the taxi afterwards when Phil? Yes, I do, she answered quickly, cutting him short. She'd no desire to dwell on the details of that awful taxi ride home. To have gone through it once was enough. And Peg and Brenda, their wives. You get on great with them that night you did, didn't you? I wouldn't say great exactly, but Colin wasn't listening. He was putting his Barry Manilow CD in the slot, the wrong way. You haven't met Samantha yet. She's the new rep. Well, new to Cork. She was working out of the Galway office up to recently. It was her idea to go out tonight. So let me see. There'll be you, me, Samantha, Peg, Brenda, Ben, and Phil, all staring at each other over a flickering candle, all being serenaded by a string quartet in this lovely new atmospheric and romantic restaurant that I love. That's just my kind of place. And you sure there isn't anyone else coming? Anyone you forgot to mention? No, that's it. What one? She muttered, but He wasn't listening. He was busy trying to extract the CD, having gotten it jammed. She might have helped him out of his choice of music had he been anything, but she'd no desire to listen to Barry Manilow proving things were bad enough. I know, why don't I ring Denise and Muriel from my office and ask them to come along? Make a real night out of it, she asked. Well, I've only booked for 7, but maybe I can ring and see if they'll fit 2 more in. The more the merrier. Colin, if you ever listen to me talking about work, you realise I'm joking. I can't stand Muriel and Denise. So you don't want me to ring? No. Anyway, we'll have a right laugh, he said. Yeah, a right laugh. So what are you waiting for? Let's not waste any time. Let's get going. Why don't you pop old Barry into your pocket, and when we get tired of the string quartet, we can stick him on in the restaurant, for I think it's going to be that kind of a night. Colin still couldn't figure out if Michaela was being sarcastic or not. Will we have to change first, he said. What's wrong with what I'm wearing? Asked Michaela, feeling a little annoyed after all her effort. You look lovely, that dress is beautiful on you. It really is, he said, looking properly at her for the first time. Maybe a little makeup. Thanks. Look, I'll go get changed, she said. I won't be long. But Michaela knew he would. He always was. She put the guard in front of the fire and the dinner in the fridge, took out one of the bottles of beer and wandered upstairs. As he splashed and sprayed himself in the bathroom, she drank the beer, put on some makeup and played around with her hair. And she put on a pair of knickers, so much for best laid plans. Polly's Friday nights required no planning, but Polly's Friday nights never varied. Polly's family always had their tea that bit later than usual, for on Friday night Mr. Odlum went to collect Polly, his one and only darling daughter, his precious baby, his heart's delight, or his pet, as he called her, not being given to sentimental verbosity, a simple term which belied the depth of his feelings, for she was all those things to him and more, almost everything you could say, and it was with a happy heart indeed that he made the weekly trip to the train station in Mallow to bring Polly home after her week in college. And as we did every Friday night, mother and grandmother waited in the Odlum kitchen, listening out for the sound of the car returning. For as soon as they'd hear it, they'd start frying eggs and wetting the tea, tasks which needed to be left to the last minute if they were to be just right. Everything else was ready. The table was laid, the rashers and the sausages were set out on warm plates in the oven. Homemade bread filled the basket. Every few minutes Granny went to the window and peering out into the dark, she'd say, "You'd think they'd be here by now, wouldn't you, Margaret?" Then she'd turn around again, study the table critically, and smooth out an imaginary crease in the white linen cloth, or select one of the heavy silver knives of work, all equally shiny, for a bit of spit and polish. Finally a car was heard. "I hear them, Margaret, I hear the car. They're pulling into the yard, Margaret." At this cue Mrs. Odlum cracked the eggs into the pan, saying as she always did at this point, "A fry would be a nice change for her. God knows what she's eating up in Cork." "Polly always loved a fry," says Granny, giving her usual reply as she went about wetting the tea. Then pointing at the table she remembered fondly, even when she was only that high, she'd be rubbing the rasher skins off the plate, wouldn't she, Margaret? "They're here, I hear the car," said Polly's Uncle Joe, arriving into the kitchen. "Well, the tea's ready," said Granny. "I'll just go out and give her a hand with the bag," said Uncle Joe. Polly smelt the fry as she came into the house, and her stomach turned, and as always she regretted not having told her mother right from the start that the last thing she wanted on a Friday night was a fry, for every single evening, without fail, that's what she got served up in her hostel. But after all these months, it was too late to say anything. She couldn't bear to have her mother look at her puzzled and hurt, wondering why on earth she hadn't said anything sooner. "I'll just put the bags in your room, Polly," called Uncle Joe. "Thanks, Uncle Joe," said Polly, looking after him as he struggled up the stairs, thinking his bags were far too heavy for him. To tell him she'd take them up herself would be denying him his way of helping, and showing her he was glad to have her home. Her father went on into the kitchen before her. "Will you look at what I brought home with me?" he said to Granny and Mrs. Odlum as Polly arrived in after him. In the rich farmlands of North Cork, the Odlums lived on their 150-acre farm, situated halfway between Buttevant and Mallow. Like the neighbours around them, they were dairy farmers, but years ago, when Polly was 2 or 3, taking advantage of the location of their farm, which fronted onto the N20, the main Cork-Limerick road, they'd set aside 10 acres for market gardening, and had opened a shop at the roadside to sell their produce. Over the years, the range of merchandise had extended, and now, in addition to their extensive array of vegetables and fruits, they sold other items: concrete flowers, troughs, and garden ornaments Uncle Joe had taken to making. Antique Mr. Odlum had started buying up. Mrs. Odlum seedlings and potted plants, antique cozies, sweaters, homemade jam, and other miscellaneous items Granny Odlum was forever beavering away at. The shop was no more than a shed, really, although if Mrs. Odlum had her way, which she didn't, it would have been flattened and a nice custom building put instead, where they might sell tea and spoons and the like to the passing tourists. But over the years, as the range became too big for the building, the bulkier items were spread out along the grass margin, and their operation had become something of a landmark to passing traffic. Between the shop and the farm, the Odlums were a busy family, and had a lot to tell Polly when she came home on Friday night. As Polly supped her tea and played around with her fry, managing to make it look like she was eating it, she listened to the stories her family had stored up all week. For half the pleasure of their daily happenings lay in telling Polly. "Polly, listen to what happened on Wednesday," began Gran now. "This lady came into the shop. Foreign she was, French, I'd say, by the accent. Although Granny was 84 now, serving in the shop was her job, and she was never happier than talking to people who stopped by. She'd keep them there for as long as she could, finding out all about them, and many a traveller's journey was delayed by an hour or more when they came in from where they had intended to be for a quick look around. Well, she left her husband in the car and came in, grinning and saying, she hadn't much to say for herself. I couldn't get a word out of her, but the French are like that, aren't they? Kind of business-like in their manner, she said, knowledgeably. Anyway, she must have been 20 minutes looking around. I said to myself, I know her kind, she'll have a gawk at everything and buy nothing. But in the end, didn't she pick up a pot of jam, put a £10 note on the counter, and wait until I tell you this part, Polly. Before I had a chance to give her change, had she gone back into the car and off they'd driven. Can you credit it? I'd figure she must have thought the jam was £10, not a pound. Imagine thinking a pot of jam cost £10. Who should Granny? Polly, don't believe a word she says, said Uncle Joe. Your grandmother's a crafty woman. She knew what she was doing all right when she pocketed the £10 note. Okay, I think we'll leave it there now, because this chapter seems to be extra long, and no doubt you're already sleepy. And finish off that chapter another day. Yeah, I'll end up just reading it to myself because you could sleep. So, that's all for today. From our little book, We Will Love Polly Odlum. I hope you'll join me again for the rest of it. And I hope you have a good night and a good sleep. Take care.